Right, we have tsunami alerting system review. I'm happy to second it. This is common sense all the way. And poor old Brendan's been sitting there.
All morning.
Is it any, we've all read it, is there any questions of us? Celeste?
And he's got one while Celeste is getting ready.
Oh, yeah. Right, Yanni, then Tim, then Celeste.
So just under point 7, when we had the feedback to community board, or from community board, I raised the concern that we're focusing a lot of time and attention on the tsunami risk, which is incredibly low probability, but obviously very significant consequence, versus the flooding hazard, which is very high probability and probably, you know, can be medium, low to medium consequences. So I'm just trying to understand, like, how can we get work done around engaging communities around resilience on more than just tsunami hazards as part of this plan, given that things like flooding are something that's real and impacts people?
Prepared for that question is outside the scope of this paper. But,
Exactly what I was going to say.
Well, 7, it says notes to change the tsunami alerting system, integrate project implementation through new tsunami evacuation zones, coming to an installation of signage and increased community education and resilience building program. Like, it's just, is there a capacity within that work to include more hazards than just tsunami? Like, if you're going into a community and doing, you know, building resilience and education, are you able to include issues like flooding that happens in a much more regular basis?
It always is. So the 4 main hazards that the city faces, there's many more than that. 4 main hazards the city faces are always included in resilience planning. In some cases, we'll talk to communities about seasonal risk coming into the fire season, for example, going into the, but in the majority of cases, we're talking to the community about all hazards, which includes flooding.
And when I've asked for a copy of the civil response plans, it's very good at a high level, but there's a lack of very specific local community information around the response. As part of this process, the areas that I represent, like Wolston, which is kind of, you know, it's got some of the area where the tsunami risk is, and evacuation areas. Will you have very discrete plans for those local communities with specifics so that people can see exactly kind of what the thinking is around how to manage it at that level?
The answer to that is ideally, and detailed planning is still in its infancy. The science and the scenarios, the intelligence we need to gather, the planning at a macro level and the planning at a micro level, there's still a lot of work to be done. The ideal scenario would be that detailed, tested, reviewed plans in place. That would be the ideal scenario.
Thank you, Brendan. That's good. Celeste, do you?
Yeah, I've got a few coming in. Obviously, this is quite an important report for those of us that represent the coastal areas. So just starting with the memo that was produced in 2023, that talked about a report from the 2 council. Just talk us through what's been happening over the last, what led up to that, and then where we've been since then, because there's been about 1.5 years since then, and we haven't had an update on what the options are.
Sure. Yeah. This same question was responded by email to you previously. Also, we discussed it earlier this week, and in the report it details the memos and the process that's taken place. Over that period for the civil defence team, there have been the Port Hills fires, a number of weather events, and also the resulting recovery efforts that go on post those events as well. So there's been considerable effort, work, research, consultation, engagement, etc., put into getting this report on the table. It's arrived now. There may well be other reasons I'm unaware of, but I can assure you that the defence teams have been making a committed effort to get in.
In terms of making sure that there aren't any further delays in terms of speeding this up, what, would the team require any additional resources as part of the
Pending the decision today, yeah, we'll need advice. The effort around, almost regardless of the decision today, there's going to be additional effort put into understanding and educating the community on the tsunami risk. That will require resource. What that means, I don't know.
So we'll get some information. In regards to the number of sirens, I know that hasn't been determined, but is there, I think in the report that was talking about sort of roughly years in the way to go, but are you able to give any sort of feedback at this moment? Because a lot of people will be watching online and just wanting to understand with the remaining sirens where they go, there is a secondary system to cover areas that might not otherwise someone's out swimming, you know, they don't have their phone. Have you got a rough idea of what that might be?
Not yet, didn't take an expert risk analysis. I guess the best analogy I can draw at this point is Auckland City has gone through a similar process recently. They had 42 sirens, I believe, which is a similar number to us. And even with their population of being 1 million plus, they've reduced their siren coverage from 42 to 2. So just to draw that analogy, I expect we'd be doing something similar.
And in terms of next steps after today, what are you able to give us sort of a timeline in terms of implementation? What are we sort of thinking in terms of what the next steps would be?
No, I don't have a specific timeline. Pending the decision today, there's still a whole heap of work to be done. There's challenges around system procurement, depending on what sirens we may choose to go after. The procurement will be affected. The workload and how that's rolled out is broadly understood, but not explicitly understood.
And then just a final couple from me. I know that being the experts that you are, you can explain this in simple terms, but in terms of like areas that maybe previously had patchy coverage, are you able to just explain how the primary system works to give maybe people who are watching reassurance around the fact effective in long range situation, how that would function?
Sure, yeah, and maybe now's a good time to just introduce Rachel Hunter, staff member of ours, who's just recently returned from the UK, where she picked up her environmental science PhD in the New Zealand tsunami warning system. So literally at the table, the expert in the company. So a number of things have happened with the tsunami warning system and the emergency mobile alert over the last couple of years. The sirens were put in before emergency mobile alerts were a thing. Over that time, the science has evolved considerably, and so has the resilience of the EMA network. There are now more towers, more phones, almost 100% coverage across the entire region. The use of EMA, people who receive them and understand what they mean to them, has increased from 50% to 60% to 75% to 91%.
Yeah, it's about 90% every time the EMAs are tested. Around 90% of people are receiving those alerts, or they're near enough to somebody else who's received the alert. So it might be if you were in your home, you might not receive that alert, but your partner, whoever that you live with, might be receiving that alert. So you're still getting that same information.
Internationally, 2/3 is considered to be the threshold where a warning becomes effective. Beyond that, it becomes even more effective. There are in the report, it also mentions a 7-step process that people go through to receive these alerts, and those steps are hearing it, which sirens will be there for, understanding it, so sirens fall down there, believing it, and by this point, sirens are becoming less and less credible. It is about personalising it, responding to it. There's a piece of there around confirmation and decisions as well. So the EMA, your phone, when it goes off, allows you to go through that 7-step process, whereas a siren only gives you arguably 1.5 parts of that. So just also for reassurance for the community too, because I understand there's some concern in the community, the emergency mobile alerts that you receive on your phone aren't sent over the text network. So people I understand have been saying during the earthquakes here, the phone system was overloaded and therefore the text won't work. So they treat these, people couldn't make calls, but they could text. And that aside, these emergency mobile alerts come on a different channel, so they won't be overloaded. So we have almost 100% coverage in terms of phone ownership. We have almost 100% coverage in terms of phone area. We've got telecos that are on board. It's a system owned and operated by the government. It comes at little to no cost to us here, except as taxpayers. It's robust. It's internationally recognised as best practice. Then GNS Science, NEMA and the New Zealand Tsunami Working Group all support not using sirens as a primary part of the tsunami warning.
And just finally, those alerts, if you get, for instance, the vibration.
I'll get them.
Thank you.
All good? Right, Tim and then Andre, did you have a call?
At some stage, and welcome. Is this the first time at the table? Yeah, and a lovely report, so great. Thank you. With regards to lessons learned elsewhere, you've mentioned that other areas going from 3 areas to 1, etc. It would be really good at some stage to look at those lessons learned and the journey there from other, not obviously here, but at some stage. So we've got a better understanding when we're talking to our community boards, etc.
Quite a lot of work's gone on that already. Of the 27 municipalities in Japan that were affected by the tsunami there 10 or so years ago, 17 of those municipalities, their tsunami systems failed.
Wow.
That contributed to their death toll. So, and there's a number of other lessons there that were incorporated in this too. So we're really confident. We are 100% confident that the recommendation getting today is the right one.
And there've been lots of reviews that have been conducted around New Zealand as well. So Brendan's already mentioned that one in Auckland where they reduced their sirens all the way down to just 2 when they had over 40 beforehand. Similar reviews have been conducted for Hawke's Bay and also Bay of Plenty as well. And they have found very similar findings to us where they have that emergency mobile alert as their primary method, and then have lots of infill methods in that multimodal system with television, radio, social media, websites, and then sirens only in those areas where the EMA coverage might not be as good.
I've seen those videos in Japan, which are, scary as, but the sirens were going and people were just kept driving like normal. It's quite amazing. So, look, thank you very much for the report, Rachel, and welcome. Cheers.
And Andre, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying around the primary part of it. What I'm not quite keeping my head around is why there'd be a reduction and why you wouldn't have multiple methods to foolproof it, right? That's just not the part I'm quite understanding, and why you'd lessen the amount from what was there currently.
So
I'm just not getting that part. Why you wouldn't? Is it not more the merrier?
So absolutely, if the system was not as outdated and it's not very fit for purpose. So essentially what we want to do is we want to take this multimodal system, like you say, that has lots of different options for us to get messaging to as many people as possible. But we want each of those options within the multimodal system to be as effective as possible. And currently, with the situation we have with our sirens in Christchurch, it is not an effective option anymore. There are too many issues that make that system fragile. That means that we do not have the confidence that we would be able to activate those sirens and to use them if we needed them. The most recent example of that was when we tried to test them very recently in April when we had daylight savings, and the test unfortunately failed. So if that was during a real event and we're putting effort into trying to activate those sirens that aren't working, that could mean that people are perceiving, well, actually there is no threat, the sirens haven't gone off, when actually there is a threat, but we just cannot activate that system. So that might cause confusion if you're getting alerts from different methods, but the sirens haven't gone off. People might be thinking, what's going on here? Why is that confusion happening? So that's what we want to be avoiding within this system. We want to make it simplified and make it effective.
Just like for a benefit. So let's say I'm talking to Joe Boggs down at the pub and might live near the beach, doesn't use a cell phone. How do I explain to them that where there was a siren near you, there will be no longer? But we are also trying to improve the the alert system. That's just the part, I'm not, I don't quite understand how we're going to be able to go forward and have that confidence in what we're doing.
There's parts of this, the warning system that, again, it's in the report, but just to bubble it back to the surface. For a local source tsunami, there will be no official alert. It will be long or strong, get gone. So if you feel the earthquake, you see the sea retreating, you should follow those natural hazard signs and depart. If there is enough time to send a warning, we want that warning system to be robust, and that is the emergency mobile alert. In all of those circumstances, there will be people that don't have their phone on them or don't use a phone. And that's only a small minority in New Zealand now, but there will still be some people that will be. So the key here is not more technology, but better societal connection. So to your analogy, you're at the pub with your mate, talking about that. If he doesn't have a phone, the responsibility is on you and him to connect with each other. So when you get the alert, you connect with your mate who doesn't have the phone, so you can help him out. Same as the older people and the younger people as well.
I live in Halsey where he lives on the beach, you know.
So he'll have a neighbour, but he'll have, you know, it's not, so it's not you specifically. I'm talking about the community connection of people that wrap around him, his friends, his neighbours, his community, his faith group, his sports club, etc.
Thank you. And lastly, Yanni.
Just wanted to understand, in the event of power failure, what happens? Obviously, we saw Cyclone Gabrielle. There was a significant loss of telecommunications because of loss of power. So are you able just to clarify what would happen in that case?
Yeah, so Cyclone Gabrielle and a tsunami don't mean to be facetious, but different events. Cell phone towers lose power. They'll lose electricity, and then they'll immediately flick over to battery. And the battery will enable this message to get sent out for hours afterwards. So that'll be more than enough time for the tsunami expert panel to make the recommendation to send the EMA. Hours and hours further down track, if there's been a tsunami which has triggered a power cut and the batteries have failed, at that point then, far past the point where an EMA will need to be sent. So in these circumstances, it's not.
Right. So what we've been told in the past too is that the far range tsunami sources, something happens in South America, you know, if it happens in the middle of the night, then it could take hours before it gets to us. You're saying there'd still be a risk that by the time it got here, we wouldn't be able to communicate. We'd be able to communicate once the event happens.
Well, it's unlikely that an earthquake in Chile is going to.
Right.
Good answers, good questions. Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm gonna put this, but before I do that, I'd just like to thank Brendan and the team, because you've been working on this for 18 months, 2 years, a wee bit longer. And you know, we've got an old, outdated, expensive system, which is expensive to maintain. So this, I feel, is a great result. So everyone's on the right track, I'm sure. So I'll put this motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Brilliant. Thank you. Carried.